On to other news relating to Libya. Now, Egypt's military government says it has reinforced its border with Libya. It also says that it will open a crossing on the coastal border to enable the sick and injured to leave Libya. Let's speak to AlJazeera's Shireen Tadros, who is live for us in Cairo. Shireen, we're hearing that the Libyan authorities have, in fact, allowed Egyptian jets to land there. Can you confirm this?
Yes, according to state television, that is indeed correct. The two planes that were on their way to Libya about 3 hours ago are being allowed to land there, the two Egyptian military planes. And we do understand as well from the military that there are other planes that they would like to send, and they're still seeking more permission to send those. Earlier on, we heard that the Libyans had granted permission to 2 extra Egypt air flights to land in Libya and to evacuate Egyptian nationals living there. There are 1.5 million Egyptian nationals in Libya. This is a massive evacuation effort on the part of the Egyptian military, and really a huge test for the new Egypt, how it's going to deal with this impending crisis. So they are working on many different fronts. All the main ministries here in Egypt are indeed involved in this rescue effort by land and indeed by air. By air, of course, it's faster, and that is where they are concentrating their efforts. But there are also buses that are going across the border and the reinforcements there on the border on the Egyptian side, trying to ensure the safe passage of those evacuees. We're hearing thousands of Egyptians are landing or indeed coming across the crossing there, and we expect that to continue throughout the day.
So Egypt's concerned about the security at its border. What's the relationship been like between Libya and Egypt, Shireen?
Well, historically, it's been a very up and down and very tense relationship between the two countries. And I certainly think that after Saif al-Islam Gaddafi's last speech, where he talked about Egypt and indeed Tunisia, and he almost pitted those two countries against Libya in a way to say that those two countries have experienced these revolutions, they've overthrown their regime, and now it's almost as if they are against or may support the people inside Libya in this uprising against their regime. And certainly that was taken on board by the Egyptian Foreign Ministry that replied to that speech that was given by Saif al-Islam and said that it was very worrying that he made statements like that. So certainly we're seeing a war of words between the two countries and where that will go. There is also a flurry of diplomatic activity taking place today in Cairo. Various European officials here in the capital talking with the Supreme Military Council, including, of course, Catherine Ashton, the EU Foreign Policy Chief, and also the Italian Foreign Minister, who has been meeting, or will be meeting, I should say, with the Defense Minister, the Egyptian Defense Minister, and the Egyptian Foreign Minister. Now, we understand that those meetings are concentrated on trying to coordinate evacuation and rescue plans. Of course, Italy also has many nationals inside Libya, rather than any kind of discussion on military options.
So some diplomatic activity then in Egypt there. And of course, there's the Arab League meeting that's expected later today on the situation in Libya. What can we expect to come out of that?
Well, traditionally, the Arab League has been seen as very active in its words and its statements, but not so good on its actions on the ground. And I don't expect very much more than strong statements to come out of that Arab League meeting, which is due in a few hours' time at 15 GMT. It will put some of those members in the Arab League in an awkward position. Don't forget that some of those members, like Bahrain, in Yemen, Algeria, Morocco, they're facing their own uprisings, or indeed the seeds of an uprising in their own country. So it'll be interesting to see how they phrase the statement that comes out at the end of the day. But certainly when it comes to the force that the Libyan regime is using against its people and the reported brutality that's being used, I expect that there'll be strong words from all the member states and a unanimous agreement on the strong words that come out of that statement on that issue of the use of force by the Libyan regime.
Thank you very much, Shireen Tadros, reporting there live from Cairo. Now, Libya is one of the world's biggest oil producers and has the largest proven oil reserves in Africa. But with the continuing unrest, analysts say that reserves are not what counts in the short run, but daily output production. Libya has the largest oil reserves, as we just said, in Africa, and the second largest in the world. That produces $154 million in revenue a day. This, as two-thirds of the country's population earn less than $2 a day. Joining us now live from London is Caroline Bain, who's an oil and commodities specialist from the Economics Intelligence Unit. Thank you very much for speaking to us. So what impact is this unrest having on energy prices? Can you hear me?
Sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Yes, my question was, what impact is the unrest in Libya having on world energy prices?
Well, energy prices are rising across the board, particularly oil prices, of course. There's always a political risk premium in the oil price, and we're seeing it escalate at the moment. I think Brent is up at about $107 a barrel today. It started the year at about $92 a barrel.
So the oil prices are rising then. We heard Saif al-Islam say yesterday that the West won't let the Gaddafi regime fall because of oil. It almost sounded like he was blackmailing the West. Do you think that Europe or the United States can do without Libyan oil? How important is Libya's oil?
Libya produces about 2% of the world's global supply of oil, but it is the world's 12th largest exporter, so it is important to the world oil market. But I think it needs to be put into context. At the moment, OPEC is restraining output. They've got production ceilings. Reportedly, there is spare capacity of about 6 to 8 million barrels a day in OPEC member states alone. So if Libyan oil was to be disrupted in a serious way, it might take a week or so, or perhaps a month or so, but there is available capacity for oil production to cover the loss from Libya. So I think that this is perhaps a bit of an exaggeration. In the short term, it's definitely a big risk. But in the more medium term, I don't think the world's
But what about for Libya itself? I mean, 80% of their oil goes to Europe. If they stop doing that, I mean, what impact is that likely to have on the industry inside the country itself?
Well, the impact on Libya, I think, is far greater. I think about 98% of government revenue comes from oil and gas. Well over 80% of exports, again, from hydrocarbons. So my feeling is that neither side within Libya itself will be particularly interested in disrupting the supply of oil and gas.
Okay, Caroline Bain in London, thank you very much for your insight there. Now, a number of Libya's ambassadors have resigned, including the ambassador to the Arab League, who handed his resignation on Sunday in protest to what he says is an oppression against protesters. Libya's ambassador to India also resigned and is afraid to return to his country. He told AlJazeera that fighter aircrafts were used on protesters. The Libyan ambassador in Poland has also quit in a show of support with protesters in his country. In Indonesia, the Libyan ambassador handed in his resignation, which he declared was in protest against, quote, the brutal acts of Gaddafi. And in the past few hours, AlJazeera's Nicholas Haque was the last person to speak to Libya's ambassador to Bangladesh before he went into hiding. He decided to